This is Bret the Hitman Hart, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Hey guys, my name is James Walsh, and you are listening to the Wrestling Epicenter here on YouTube. I want to thank you for finding us. Please do me a favor and click that subscribe button and the notifications bell. And if you get the chance on this video, click the like button. If you do, it'll turn blue. Check it out. Also, check out WrestlingEpicenter.com for all this great content available in MP3 format, our online store that'll keep us going free and clear, daily news updates, as well as all the information from the history of professional wrestling you could possibly ever want. Check out WrestlingEpicenter.com online right now. Without any delay, let's get to your interview here on the Wrestling Epicenter. Welcome back to the interactive interview right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com, as we are now being joined by the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. It's truly our treat to introduce WWE Hall of Famer Bret the Hitman Hart. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing excellent.
Excellent. Very good. It's great to have you on. I know you've done a couple in the last couple of days, and you got to be getting a little bit punched down on them, but great to have you on. We've been trying to get you on here for 6.5 years, so it's a treat.
Wow, it's nice to finally get a chance to settle the score for you.
Oh, well, it's great to have you. Now, we're actually having you on to promote the event that's happening in Newark, California on May 9th, which is WrestleFest, part of Big Time Wrestling and Kirk White's Productions. And why don't you tell us a little bit what's going to happen there? You're obviously one of the big guests coming in, Rob Van Dam. What are you looking forward to with that event?
Well, it's always nice for me. I always had a lot of fans in this part of the country, and it's always great for me because it's the type of audience that you get at the big time wrestling shows is a type of audience that loves sort of the history of wrestling and the people that sort of were the stars from yesterday, and Honky Tonk and different guys always come out here and come out this way, and there's Kamal is going to be on this show, and some of these other guys. It's just nice to finally see them again,
Mm-hmm. Now, during these fan fests, a lot of these guys, when they do these interviews and shoot interviews and things, they say a lot of things about people. Is there ever anybody who, says, well, you said this about me and you said that about me, or is it pretty much all just, I'm just glad to see you again?
A little bit of both, I guess. It depends if you say a lot of stuff about people. I'm sure some, when you see them again, they might have something to say. A lot of guys don't. I don't know too many wrestlers that pay too much attention to what they hear somebody said about them. And for the most part, when you finally see each other, it's optional as whether you want to bring it up.
Now, Patrick wanted to ask you a question about there's a rumor going around on the internet, and I'll let Pat take it. You want to take it?
Sure, absolutely. In a recent interview, Shawn Michaels came out and talked about the event of when he will be inducted into the Hall of Fame and said he would consider asking you to induct him. Now, obviously, that sparked a lot of conversation among many wrestling fans of what would happen if you did induct Shawn Michaels. Would you consider doing it?
I don't think so.
Not your cup of tea?
I think that's quite a stretch right now.
Exactly. But there is another rumor going around, and that is that the Funk Brothers have asked the WWE if they would consider having you induct him, or if you would consider doing so. Is there any chance we might see you at the Hall of Fame?
No, I won't be there. Dory did want me to induct him into the Hall of Fame, and they had already picked Dusty Rhodes, I think. I don't think it was any big wasn't any kind of a big story or a headline or anything, but I think it was nice that they thought of me, and it was nice that Dusty, I'm sure, will do a good job, and he's probably got as much to say about the Funks as anybody else.
Absolutely. Now, you have your book out, and the book is phenomenal. I have actually both versions of the book, the Canadian and the U.S. version, and it's great to finally get the chance to talk to you a little bit about it. Now, what is your honest opinion? When I started trying to get you for this interview 6.5 years ago, your assistant said that you had started writing it and that you were thinking of doing it in volumes. And it is a long book by wrestling book standards, but is there any still chance that a lot of the edited down material might still pop up somewhere?
It's possible. It's quite conceivable, but in a lot of ways, they're a lot of the same kind of stories. So it's awful hard to weave them back in into anything, but I'll have to take a good look at it. You know, after writing that book and reading it as many times as I read it, in the process of writing it, to go back and read the original manuscript is quite it's kind of quite a journey in itself. You know, there's a lot of stuff that was, a lot of the real gems didn't quite make the cut. You know, mostly because there was similar types of stories in there, but there's some really neat stuff in the first book that didn't make it.
Now, do you think that the edited down version is a good representation of what you had in mind for the book, though?
Yeah, I think so. You know, in the end, I think for, like you said, it was a long enough book as it was. And if I think, you know, you have to, I heard someone refer to it once as killing your babies. You know, sometimes you have to let little stories go because it's a good story and has a nice, it's got a fun message and all that behind it. But, you know, there's another one just like it coming up, or another one that we just wrote a story about that. Similar kind of, a lot of the camaraderie kind of stories and some of the ribs and stuff like that. You know, I found them quite amusing when I wrote them, and I kind of miss that they're not in there, some of them.
Excellent.
Well, speaking of your career, one of my favorite things about the WWE nowadays are their DVD releases. And I gotta say that when they finally released the best of DVD of you, that was probably their best DVD release ever. Like, even today, I still think that's their best release. But I noticed that there's a lot of material from your career that was not included. Is there any chance of us getting a volume 2?
I would hope so. You know, last conversation I had with Vince McMahon, it was something I thought was clearly, you know, he definitely had plans for a second and a third.
Do you know if those plans are still what he's saying, or is that just still hearsay at this time?
You know, I just don't know.
Just don't know. A few months ago, I was watching TMZ, and you know how they are. They like to get the cameras in your face, and they hope that somebody will say something to either, you know, put egg on their face or trip over or whatever. And they were desperately trying to create something there. What do you think of TMZ? What do you think of them trying to get you to basically start some kind of a ridiculous rivalry with Hulk Hogan?
Well, say that one more time.
A few months ago, I was watching TMZ. It's a, you know what that is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They had, I don't even know if you know that they aired it, but they aired a clip of you at an airport waiting for your luggage, and they were trying to kind of stir some stuff between you and Hulk Hogan and them. What do you think about shows like that, going out there, even attacking wrestlers now, trying to, you know, create controversy where there isn't any?
Well, I think there's probably some guys that encourage that stuff, that seem to look for the headlines. You know, I think sometimes you even hear those kind of people who are in the area, they do everything they can to you know, have the camera show up. It's sort of a double-edged sword. Some people encourage it, some people discourage it. I don't personally have any kind of big issue with it. I remember them now. They were trying to get me to say something controversial, but you know, sometimes they just speak the truth. You know, you have to let the truth guide you, and you're okay. You know, that's how I always felt. Exactly.
I believe that their exact question was, you know, who would win in a match between you and Hulk Hogan? And it was just like, oh, wow, that's a heck of a question there. So why don't I ask it? No, just kidding. Real quick question for you here, and we're going to let you off the phone soon because I know you're traveling. You did an interview yesterday with Michael Porter over at Wrestle Shoot, and I thought one of your responses was pretty interesting. You were talking about who you could wrestle if you had one last match, and you mentioned Owen Hart and you mentioned Curt Hennig. What made you choose those two guys? Obviously Owen. But...
They were both really safe and careful guys to wrestle, yet you could really work hard with them, and you know, work a pretty hard pace, and in a lot of ways just get a good workout and have a lot of fun in there, and not it was never a grueling battle trying to fight for holds or fight for they were great workers.
One thing I've noticed about the past generation, when guys like you and Owen and Curt Hennig wrestled, and today's generation, is that, to me, it seems obvious that the matches today are scripted from bell to bell, while back when you wrestled, it seemed more natural and more like you guys were just having fun out there and just working the crowd. Have you noticed that, or do you have any comments on the way wrestling currently is today?
Yeah, I think the same can be said for interviews and stuff like that, too. You know, sometimes people say the interviews back then, you know, you were a little slower sometimes, and it was kind of a little more drawn out. But sometimes that extra pause and that reality, because most wrestlers like Piper and myself and Steve Austin and stuff, we made up what we said on the spot. It all came out very spontaneous. But the guys that are wrestling today, it's basically somebody writing scripts for them and telling them what to say, which is fine. It comes off very slick and polished now, you know, but it doesn't seem quite so real to me sometimes. It seems like bad acting.
Okay.
So, you know, I don't know if that's just the way it's evolved now, but
What
I think the wrestling itself, there's a lot of really, really good wrestlers out there, but it seems that nobody takes the time to slow down and tell a story. It seems like everyone's in such a rush to tell a story that the story itself lacks credibility sometimes.
Do you think that's from lack of TV time, or do you think that's just, you know, them wanting to...
It's just bad story writers.
Bad story writers?
There's a lot of the storylines in wrestling sometimes get pretty hokey.
Yeah.
And Noah right now, it seems that they're, you know, it's all about entertainment.
Mm.
And they're not so much about trying to sell the wrestling sometimes, just trying to sell the entertainment.
Yeah.
And I can see that, but I also, I've always been a very, sort of a consummate wrestling fan. I like the wrestling. I like watching you know, for years I loved watching Benoit wrestle whenever I watched TV, because he was always somebody that was always going to give you a pretty good match. And you watch certain guys, even Austin and Undertaker, always give you a pretty good match.
Hmm.
And, you know, a lot of the wrestlers today seem to, they all look the same and talk the same and act the same. And, you know, the promos in the back all seem very staged the same. And the writing is the same. And, you know, I like some of the stuff they're doing, and I like a lot of the wrestlers they got, but I just, the stories need to get a little more real sometimes.
You know,
it's nice to see some of the belts being a little more.
Yeah, they're starting to a little bit too, which is good.
I think the Intercontinental title, it's the first time in a long time it's even been on a pay-per-view, I think.
Especially at WrestleMania.
You know, so it's maybe they're trying to revive certain things. It's nice to see a belt that had that kind of history that it had a few years ago, you know, mean something again.
Absolutely. One of the things that I agreed with entirely during your whole Canadian turning on America and all that was that you were talking about the product, the WWE product, and how it was becoming smut and it was becoming something that was tough for kids to watch. And now with the WWE kind of changing the dial a little bit, maybe they're going back to, they apparently now are calling themselves PG again. Do you think that that is a good thing for the future of wrestling, or does it not make much of an impact?
Well, you know, they're probably the ones that know better than me. But all I know about wrestling is it evolves all the time. It just evolves, and it's morphed into more things right from the start. You know, like going back to like in the early '80s when Hulkamania sort of became a big thing. Wrestlers became basically modern, like real life cartoon characters, with Hulk Hogan and Junkyard Dog and the Sheik, and we became just cartoon characters. Mm-hmm. And that was a really fun period, and I kind of liked being a cartoon character for quite a few years. And I think when I finally got my sort of chance to be the star of the show of wrestling, mm-hmm. I took it a different direction in the sense that I made it more about the wrestling. It wasn't about people don't necessarily remember Bret Hart so much as they remember Bret Hart's matches. And, I made it all about the wrestling. I wasn't a guy that was famous for his, you know, 24-inch pythons or his great interviews so much as I was famous for my great matches.
Absolutely. I mean, when they released that Raw DVD a few years ago, one of the things I was so excited to see again was the match that you had with the 1-2-3 Kid, just because it was a great wrestling match, and it was babyface versus babyface, but it still was just a great match, and I don't know, I long for those days, personally.
I remember at the time that the Kid told me, he had gone through an airport, and he said all the WCW wrestlers had stopped him. Paul Orndorff stopped him in particular and said, I watched you last night on Raw. That was one of the greatest matches, best matches I ever watched in my life. Made me really proud of the business. There was a lot of guys that really loved that simple story that I had with the Kid. You know, that sort of realism. I remember he took some great elbow smashes in the corner. You know, he gave me a pretty stiff spin kick too. I think he about broke my jaw. He's pretty nervous, Sean, when he had that match with me.
You wouldn't have known it based on how it turned out, though, because it came out pretty darn good.
Yeah, it did. It was a classic for a while.
All right, now I'm going to close out with just a few more questions. I'll let Pat
ask one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. One thing I wanted to ask you about, going back to something you said earlier, you said that there are a lot of really good wrestlers out there today. Who would you say are the best wrestlers in wrestling today?
Well, just seeing him and watching him, Randy Orton seems like a really good worker, really solid. He seems to have his dad's wrestling. He's like I wouldn't even say, but he might be better than his father, who was one of the best. But he seems, when I watch him, he seems really tight and really, great facials, great realism. He seems really intense, and I like watching him. I like his interviews. I like his intensity. I like his look. And I like his work, most of all. He's a good worker. I would love to have worked with him. I would love to have worked with Batista. I would like to have worked with John Cena, even if some people feel that they're limited. I think I could have great matches with either one of those guys. But it would be fun to work out a match with those guys.
Did you ever get the itch to get back in there one last time? Or?
Well, you think about it sometimes, but it's not sometimes, I can think about it and hope, wish. But, I mean, the fact is I can't... I really can't take any chances with my head or my even a wrestling training or a wrestling school is sort of out of the question for me. I couldn't take a lot of falls, or the concussion injury made it pretty much impossible for me to even consider going back to wrestling in any shape or form.
Absolutely. And I want to close out with a tough one. And this is a few weeks ago. We're actually going to try to dedicate this show. We have Albert, his former tag partner, coming in. We lost Test a few weeks ago, and we're trying to do a little bit of a tribute here for him. And do you have any fond memories? I know that you took Test aside, and your reputation isn't always one that a lot of the guys who don't like you say that you're not one who's usually, willing to go out of your way for people, but you really did take your time and really work with Test. What is your opinion on the unfortunate passing of Test?
Well, I think it's a real shame because everybody, I think, was under the illusion, maybe and him most of all, that he had beaten his drug problem and that he was somebody that was ahead of the game now, and that his horse was behind him. I don't think anyone realized how quick his fall was in the end. He was fine when I saw him last just before Christmas over in Europe. He'd come out of rehab, and he seemed like a reborn. He had the whole world in front of him. Seemed really positive and straight in his head. I think when I think of what happened with Tess, I feel really bad that whatever unraveled, it unraveled really fast, and a lot of people, because I know he had a lot of friends around him, a lot of loved ones, he had a lot of family around him that cared about him, that were been worried about him for a long time. And when he died, I don't think anyone had a chance to even run catch him. We were all kind of caught looking. It seemed like we turned our back for a second, and he died.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were pretty sad, and a lot of people were pretty hurt, and a lot of people were frustrated that we lost another brother,
Absolutely. And one last question. We were talking about this a little bit before we started the interview. There's a new DVD out, but it's the Wrestling with Shadows DVD. Now, everybody watched that and was enthralled by it when it first came out, and I see that on your website you guys have re-released it with the life and death of Owen Hart. Is there anything extra on there that we didn't see in the original video release?
Well, if you mean you're talking about the one with Owen,
yeah.
Unless you've seen that before, it's quite a good a little documentary on Owen. It was quite it's quite prophetic in a lot of ways. A lot of the things that Owen talked about, and a lot of things that Owen said that are in that film. It's a very moving story about Owen, and it's I think anyone that liked the Wrestling with Shadows, this was all stuff that just came out of the outtakes of Wrestling with Shadows, and it's a film that stands on its own. It's alongside the Wrestling with Shadows. It's I always found it really moving.
Absolutely. Well, I think the last thing I'll ask you, one word association. We always close out with it, and I think we have to ask it. What's your current and hopefully future opinions of the man that screwed you, Vince McMahon?
Oh, I think I wish him well. I don't have any big problem with Vince anymore. I think did what he did, and it's over and done with. And the fact of the matter is, I always be grateful for most of what he did for me, and most of my memories are good. And there wouldn't be Bret Hart, and I wouldn't be talking to you now if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. I don't agree with what he did. I wish it hadn't happened, but there's nothing I can do about that either.
Yep. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, and I honestly got to say, it's great to have had you on the show. Anything in the future that we can help you promote, please do give us a call, and I look forward to hearing how it turns out in May 9th in Newark, California. Big Time Wrestling presents WrestleFest 09, and Bret Hart, thank you so much for stopping by.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, and Bret, before I let you go, can I ask for one little favor? You can reject this if you don't want to do it. By the way, we're not recording. Hello?
Hello?
Okay, you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, can I ask you if you can give us just a brief liner, basically saying this is Bret Hart and you're listening to the interactive interview?
Okay.
I'll count you down, and we'll record again in 5, 4, 3, 2.
This is Bret the Hitman Hart, and you're listening to the interactive interview.
Hey guys, my name is James Walsh, and you are listening to the Wrestling Epicenter here on YouTube. I want to thank you for finding us. Please do me a favor and click that subscribe button and the notifications bell. If you get the chance on this video, click the like button. If you do, it'll turn blue. Check it out. Also, check out WrestlingEpicenter.com for all this great content available in MP3 format, our online store that'll keep us going free and clear, daily news updates, as well as all the information from the history of professional wrestling you could possibly ever want. Check out WrestlingEpicenter.com online right now. Without any delay, let's get to your interview here on the Wrestling Epicenter.